I'm Chelsea, and this is the weekly show where I go live and we talk about space, we talk about science, we talk about everything that's new in outer space, and I answer your questions live. So for those who haven't been here before, stay with me, and if there's any point during this that you have a question, you can always drop it into the comments below, and I will grab as many of them as possible. So I'm just going to give everyone a minute or two to log on and get ready, and then we will be good to go. So I'm going to give everyone a second or two to log on, and we should be ready to roll. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is the weekly show where I talk about all things new in space and science. So today I'm going to be talking about William Shatner's emotional journey to space and back, NASA's Lucy mission to Jupiter's Trojan asteroids, China's recent space station launch, and so much more. So without further ado, thank you for all of you that have joined me thus far. Let's chat. So as I say quite often, space is a busy place. This past week, the world watched as Star Trek actor William Shatner blasted off to the edge of space and back. Sound off in the comments below if you watched that launch. I know that many of us were watching the launch start to finish, it was less than 11 minutes. So you could have very easily watched the whole thing start to finish, and it probably wouldn't have even taken you that long. So that was really some of the biggest news of the week. Everyone was really, really excited to see William Shatner launch. He launched with Blue Origin on their New Shepard private suborbital flight. And what really grabbed everyone's attention was not just that William Shatner was launching to space and back, but it was his reaction to the flight once back on Earth. Speaking to Jeff Bezos right after the landing, Shatner was quite literally moved to tears talking about the experience in which he and the 3 other crew members blasted off, and they went a little over 62 miles above Earth's surface, which is just over the Kármán line, an internationally recognized boundary of space. So some of the things that Shatner had to say were, and I quote, "What you have given me is the most profound experience I can imagine. I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened. It's extraordinary." He also said, "I hope I never recover, that I can maintain what I feel now. I don't want to lose it." He added that everyone in the world needs to do this. Everybody in the world needs to see this. And he was in tears. He was so overcome with emotion, talking about the blue of Earth down below and looking down and seeing Earth, and then looking out and seeing the incredible blackness of outer space, and just how precious our planet and our thin, delicate atmosphere really are. So it was very moving. I'm curious, what do you think? What do you think about William Shatner launching to space? What do you think about his emotional reaction to seeing Earth from space? Sound off below in the comments. Actually, his reaction is very similar to a very common reaction that astronauts have to seeing the Earth from space. It's a psychological phenomenon that's been dubbed the overview effect. And it's an effect that happens when a human being sees Earth from outer space. And for many astronauts, they've reported it really changing their perspective in a lot of ways, in terms of not seeing borders between countries, in terms of becoming more passionate about environmental issues, about climate change issues. So it's interesting to see William Shatner's take on experiencing the overview effect. So in other launch news, China is launching its second space station crew today. The Shenzhou 13 mission is launching 3 astronauts to China's new space station module named Tianhe, which will be part of China's planned full, complete space station named Tiangong. Now, the crew very notably includes the first woman to visit the station so far, Wang Yaping. She and her crewmates will spend 6 months aboard the station. Another exciting launch, a lot of launches this week, is actually happening tomorrow. As I mentioned before, NASA will be launching its Lucy mission from their Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And this has been a long time coming, and people are really excited. Lucy is set to visit Jupiter's Trojan asteroids, which is a large group of asteroids that shares Jupiter's orbit around the sun. Scientists think that by studying these asteroids, which are a very varied bunch of rocks with remnants likely preserved from the early solar system, that they could learn using these asteroids about our early solar system. What was it really made up of? What did it look like? How did things form? How did not only these asteroids form, but all of the planets in our solar system, including Earth, all those billions of years ago? So really excited to see Lucy take off and really excited to see what Lucy learns. Now, a launch that is not going to space this weekend, but which is simulating some of its conditions, is Sunday's Astro Access launch. For those that have not heard of it, this flight, this Astro Access flight, will send a group of 12 disability ambassadors to fly weightlessly aboard a zero-G plane as it embarks on a parabolic flight. Now, in a parabolic flight, the motion of the plane, it does this arcing motion. And at the tops of the arcs, almost like how you come out of your seat at the top of a roller coaster, at the tops of these arcs, it's a little more extreme than that. So it simulates a no gravity experience and people float completely weightlessly. I actually flew on one just last year and it was unbelievable. Really, it's like gravity is suddenly removed. And then as it arcs down, those kind of the lows, there is actually extra gravity and it's extra heavy. So it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty incredible experience. So there will be 12 disability ambassadors as part of Astro Access doing this flight. Now, the ambassadors aren't there just for fun, just to say how cool it was. They're going to be completing experiments and demonstrations. And overall, using those experiments and using just their experience in general, the ambassadors they have different types of disabilities among other incredible experiences in space and science and outreach. And they will be assessing how existing space vehicles could not just be modified, but also how future space vehicles could and should be built to be more accessible to disabled space flyers. So they'll see, what are the challenges that are really presented without gravity to disabled people flying in space, in terms of everything from communication to running experiments to general safety. So they're going to be assessing the flight for accessibility. Now, additionally, Virgin Galactic also had some news. While the company previously stated that it was aiming to launch its next crewed space flight this fall, the company actually won't be launching its next crewed space flight until 2022. So for those of you that had fun watching Virgin Galactic launch its suborbital flight in July, you're going to have to wait a little while longer to see them launch again. Now, lastly, for all you Skywatchers out there, Saturday is a NASA holiday. Saturday is actually International Observe the Moon Night. They have information, NASA does on NASA, about live and virtual events you can attend, at-home ways to celebrate and learn about the moon. But however you want to get involved, I think that the easiest way to celebrate is just to look up and marvel at our incredible rocky satellite. So if you're not sure what to do with your Saturday night, if you're stuck at home, just poke your head out the window and enjoy the moon, and you'll be celebrating along with everyone at NASA. So, as always, I'm fairly long-winded, but that has been all that is new in space this week. And now we get to my favorite part of Space Chat, the chat. So if you haven't got the opportunity yet, now is your chance. Drop your questions down into the comments below, and I will grab as many of them as we have time for. A few people also asked some questions ahead of the Space Chat on social media, and I will get to as many of those as possible as well. So let's dive into them. Okay, let's see. An interesting question on Twitter. Somebody asks, are there any new planet discoveries? And actually, recently, there was a really incredible planet discovery. So with all of the incredible new space technology over the last couple of decades, it's become almost commonplace for scientists to discover new exoplanets, which is crazy because this is fairly new as far as history is concerned. But one specific planet that was just discovered is interesting scientists especially. So recently, scientists discovered the first planet ever seen orbiting a white dwarf star. Now, if you don't know what it is, a white dwarf star is basically what's left over after a star like our sun basically dies. It runs out of hydrogen, it runs out of fuel, and what's left is this white dwarf star, this core, the core of the star. And that's what's going to happen when our sun dies. So it's really interesting for scientists to not only observe, but now get the opportunity to study in detail a planet orbiting what our sun could look like in many, many, many years. Don't worry, it's a lot of years in the future. So that's one especially interesting new planet discovery. Let's see, what other questions do we have? John asks, how long until people are actually launched into orbit and make a couple trips around the planet? I'm not sure specifically what you're referring to. However, this does happen, not all the time, but occasionally. Actually, recently in September, Inspiration 4 launched and went into orbit around Earth. And it was the first ever all-civilian, all-private mission to ever orbit Earth. So obviously, when we look at NASA, we look back, before we landed on the moon and we were sending people into orbit around Earth. But now we're starting to do that with civilians, with people who are not quote unquote professional astronauts. So it was really interesting to see Inspiration 4 put 4 civilians in orbit around Earth for 3 full days. Now, when we look at companies like Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, their technology that they're currently using for these suborbital flights. So the rocket that launched Shatner, it's built to go just to the boundary of space and then back to Earth. It's not designed to take the astronauts, to take the passengers in orbit around Earth on a multi-day journey. It could possibly be modified to do so, but currently those 2 companies are working on getting people on suborbital flights. So it's a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that people aren't launching orbitally, now privately for the first time with Inspiration 4, and hopefully more in the future. We'll see. I think that'd be really cool. All right. All right. On Facebook, Dick Pangalo asks, has there been any discussion about the possibility of an atmosphere on a non-planet type object, such as an asteroid? That's very interesting. So, planets, they have very specific characteristics that make them planets. But it's not technically impossible for a really, really large asteroid or other object to potentially have some type of atmosphere around it if it has, enough of a gravitational pull to keep it there. However, we don't usually see asteroids and space objects big enough and with the right specifications for this to be possible. But that's a really interesting thing to bring up and something that's interesting to discuss. What if we came across an asteroid that wasn't a planet, perhaps from another solar system like we saw with Oumuamua, and it was large enough to have its own functioning atmosphere? Would it be considered a different type of planet? Would we have to change our classification system? It's an interesting thing to think about. All right, let's see. Victor asks, I've been wondering if a lunar rover is in development for NASA's Artemis program, and if so, I'd like to know how it will be sent to the moon. This is a great question. So NASA has what they call the Artemis program, and it's basically the follow-up to Apollo. So they're hoping that within the next few years or so, they're going to be returning humans to the moon's surface. And with that comes a lot of new technology. We saw it with Apollo, and we're seeing it again. I don't have any specific details on what a lunar rover with Artemis might look like. I do believe they're working on some type of ground vehicle, but I don't know exactly what that's going to look like when that is eventually launched. However, something like that, it depends what it looks like, right? When we think about launching rovers to Mars, they're kind of one big piece, right? There are aspects like the helicopter that have to be folded up, have to be tucked away. However, when it comes to a lunar rover, when it comes to a big rover like that, it has to be kind of ready to drive when you get there, unless NASA has other plans to change it, fix it, build it, unfold it on the moon. But again, because we don't know exactly what the next lunar rovers might look like, it's all just speculation. But it's interesting to think about. I'm curious, for those of you familiar with the Apollo program, if you think that the Artemis rover is going to be similar to that one, the moon buggy as it's known, or if it might look drastically different. I know that some people that I've spoken to think that it might look quite a bit like a moon buggy, but who knows? Who knows? Right. Raphael on YouTube asks, be honest, is it really possible for humans to live on Mars permanently? That's a great question, and I can't answer that definitively because we've never done it, because we've never even sent humans to Mars. However, it is not outside of possibility. It's not impossible from what we understand. It would be extremely difficult. It will take us a long time to make it happen. And there are explicitly very definitive risks to humans even staying on Mars for short periods of time. When we talk about radiation, we talk about the extreme temperatures, there's dust storms. It is not a friendly environment. So I do think that it's possible, but it's not going to be easy. It's definitely not going to be easy. And I do think that a lot of people going to Mars will still want to come home to Earth. I don't think everyone going will want to just abandon their life on planet Earth. Would you? I don't know. Would you abandon your life on planet Earth to live on Mars forever? I'm curious. I'm curious. Okay. On YouTube, Skylab Company asks, what will happen to the Mars rover? So for those of you that have been following space, you may know that in February, NASA landed its latest rover on Mars, Perseverance. And what will happen to it? It'll stay on Mars. It'll keep exploring for as long as NASA can keep it running. In fact, Opportunity, if we look back to previous NASA Mars rovers, Opportunity went thousands and thousands of days past its expected expiration date. And unfortunately, it's just kind of sitting on the surface of Mars. We have no way of getting them home at this point in time, but we're just going to keep having Perseverance explore, take samples, collect data for as long as we can. And that's that. Interesting questions. Let's see. Edgar, tomorrow is the start of Lucy. We need to prepare. Yes. For those of you that are part of the Lucy mission, if there's any of you on this chat, best of luck. For those of you that will be watching the launch, I hope that you are as excited as the team and as I am to see all of their hard work come to fruition and to see this spacecraft finally make its way to the Trojans. Very, very exciting. Let's see. John Walker on YouTube asks, will the sun's solar cycle affect the Artemis launch in 2024? I don't believe so. I have not heard as much. And there will be Artemis launches before 2024. 2024 has been kind of the year that NASA set saying, we want to land humans by 2024. But they do plan to launch the first non-landing on the moon Artemis missions before then. There's nothing that I've heard that the sun's solar cycle or any solar storms or anything like that will have any negative or otherwise impact on these missions. Right? Benjamin, glad you're back. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm glad I'm back too. And I'm looking forward to adding a lot more spacey things to my new space, pun intended. Let's see. Garek asks, I can't read that. Sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. Okay, Benjamin asks, are we going to have a precise telescope on the back side of the moon? So kind of the far side of the moon. That's a good question. I don't know. I think that would be interesting. I mean, we're talking about Artemis. Artemis isn't just landing humans on the moon and then sending them home. NASA's hope is that Artemis will create a sustained human presence on the moon. So people going and staying a while, setting up labs, setting up research stations. So if this continues as NASA plans, it's possible that new telescopes and new observation technologies will be placed on the moon and used from both sides of the moon, which I think will be really fascinating. Let's see. All right, David Tilley says, Uranus and Neptune haven't been visited since Voyager. Is there anything in the works to go there again? That's a really, really great question. I know that New Horizons had some really amazing images and data collected from the farther reaches of our solar system. And I know that there are in the works. NASA has a few different spacecraft that it's building and developing to go a little bit farther in the solar system. Personally, I don't know of any missions going specifically to Uranus or Neptune, but I think it would be really interesting to, in the near future, start thinking about launching a mission all the way out there, specifically with the intent of studying these planets up close. Let's see. All right. All right, Holy Schmoly on YouTube, I assume that's your real name, says Mars helicopter ends up where? It's on Mars. It's still on Mars. It's still flying. It was only supposed to fly for a few weeks, and it's done a ton of additional extra flights, really working overtime. And it got to Mars because it was tucked, origami style, folded. They literally used origami as inspiration to how to fold it into the belly of the rover, landed on Mars, and now it's off exploring. Okay, on that note, on that fun Mars helicopter note, I want to thank you all for your insight, for your questions, and your curiosity, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Observe the moon on International